Welcome to What Drives You. I'm Kevin Miller. In this episode, purpose. You are thinking of it wrong. And purpose is one of the most overused topics in the self-improvement world. Everyone seems to be talking about it. But if we look at the culture, we see more apathy and depression than ever. It reminds me of the talk so much we have on being healthy and happy, and yet we as a culture seem to be, stats-wise, sicker and sadder. Well, why? Why with purpose? Well, we're constantly talking about it, but it just seems like we're not really finding and experiencing it. So I have someone with me to help us today, Jordan Grumet. You're going to hear a very different look at what purpose is and how we can start experiencing much more of our purpose. Jordan, he's a medical doctor turned hospice doctor. He's host of the Earn and Invest podcast. He's author of a book called Taking Stock, a hospice doctor's advice on financial independence, building wealth, and living a regret-free life. That's the book that landed him here on my show the first time, and we've gotten to be friends since then. Now he's back. He's got a new book titled The Purpose Code: How to Unlock Meaning, Maximize Happiness, and Leave a Lasting Legacy. So we break down and dissect purpose. What is it actually? And why are we missing it as a culture? And I'll give to you right here what for me was the big takeaway, that you're going to find much more of your purpose in the day-to-day activities that just light you up than in pursuing this, what he calls the big P purpose, the big grand purpose of, saving the world and making some gigantic impact. Nothing against that, but we've so lost purpose in this big, gigantic pursuit. It's a very different approach here to purpose that I find is much more relevant, realistic, and attainable. And I see in my own life, it just bears truth. When I'm not having these conversations about human potential, I'm working with you guys on your human potential. You can connect with me at kevinmiller.co. Here are a few sponsors. They help make the show possible. Then drive with Jordan Grumet, Dr. Jordan Grumet, and myself as we talk about purpose and how I believe, and so does Jordan, we're looking at it culturally wrong, errantly, we're missing it. And let's figure out how to look at it, I think, correctly and actually embrace it. Well, Jordan, I am excited to have you back on the show. I talk about you. You have no idea how often I reference you in regards to, the message in your first book, Taking Stock, and some of the insights that I got from you in that book. And a top one is the change that you saw in people when they got that life-ending diagnosis. And they all of a sudden went, this is my paraphrasing, they went from this normal self-protection that we have, that we live in, to a, oh my goodness, what's possible? Because we're not going to save. I just got, the diagnosis. So what's possible? And in the same sense, so then to see you come along now with a book focused on purpose, I'm thinking it's got to embody a lot of the same concepts of when you find that thing that you have an interest in. And we're going to break down how you define purpose. But when you find that, it is a shift in perspective. Fair?
Very fair. And it's funny because my first book, Taking Stock, really one of the main premises is that we have to put purpose first before we build our financial framework. I hadn't planned on writing a book about purpose, but after talking about this over and over again with people, I would get people come up to me after my talks and conferences angry. And they'd say, you keep on telling me to find my purpose. I don't know how to do that. And I had never been confronted with that question before. And it made me realize that purpose can be very anxiety provoking for a lot of people. And that's kind of what led me to going down this rabbit hole of not just saying, hey, we have to put purpose first, but what does that actually look like in our lives?
Okay, man, so many places I want to go with this. And one of them, it's honestly been in recent years, and I just turned 54. So it was a long time coming of realizing the privilege, if I want to call it that, the blessing, the gift, whatever somebody want to say, of I've always woken up with interest for the day, just with things that I just enjoy doing. I've never not known that. I've never wanted to just kill time or, to had time to waste. I mean, I had something. I didn't realize how unique that was. And yet what you just responded or related to purpose with anxiety, that people have anxiety. I have seen it in some of my kids. So I have adult kids right now. You know, we're still in the holiday time, and I've got, I don't know, 8 kids, I think, at the house, and older ones, you know, into their mid and older 20s even. And I have seen them go through it, almost made, I'm not going to say worse, made more acute maybe by me. They got dad who's Mr. Purpose and whatever. And they came into their young adulthood thinking, oh my gosh, I got to find this holy grail of what my life is all about and what I want to do. And I felt bad. I said, guys, I go experience some stuff you don't know yet. But so I experienced it in that relation.
Well, it's interesting because what you started with is interests,
Mm-hmm.
but what you ended with is the holy grail. And
Uh-huh.
here's part of the problem. From the day we are born, we are sold a version of purpose that feels really big and audacious. Maybe it's marketing because we're watching TV and the commercials give us these images of living the good life, being ultra fit, being ultra attractive, going on tons of vacations, doing great stuff. But they're giving us that version of purpose, which they want us to co-opt so we buy their thing. Same with social media. We have influencers and people who are selling us a vision of what purpose should look like. And it's always big and audacious because they want us to co-opt that so that we can buy their thing. Even our parents and society give us a version of purpose, which is usually very big. Often our parents give it to us because they don't want the kids to make the same mistakes they made. So they're trying to bypass their own mistakes with their kids, or just the societal idea that you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or make some huge kind of living. And so, of course, it causes people anxiety. Of course, your kids feel like it's this major monumental thing that I either find and life is perfect, or I don't find and everything else is lost. But what they don't tend to do is sit back and go, well, what lights me up and excites me? And say that's enough. Because most of the time we've been taught by society that your purpose not only has to light you up, but it has to prove your worthiness. And that's a really big, difficult thing to show how worthy I am through pursuing purpose.
Proving I'm writing notes here. That is big. Okay, well, let's muddy the waters right there and get into religion. I grew up, staunch, Bible Belt, church was life, and in a very structured, and specific religion, it's Christianity. And my kids, especially my older kids, did as well. And there, of course, we strap on the word calling. What is your calling? God made you for this one specific quest to save all humanity or whatever it is, and to put that in it as well. That one, for some reason, didn't trip me up as much, but I get it. I get that as well. So let's lay that on there. And then come back over. And I appreciate greatly your perspective of big P and little p.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm not a majorly religious person. I didn't grow up with tons of religion. But here's what I think. When we're like, God put us on this earth for this one specific thing, what we're really doing is striving for godliness. Like there's this piece of perfection that I could live out, and that's my calling. That's my thing. The problem with that is that's really big and audacious and difficult to reach. Like we can't be God, right? Again, I'm not religious, but we can't be God. God is perfection. God is understanding. God is beauty. God is all of these really hard, difficult things to reach. And when we think that we have a gift that God has given us and we have to live up to that gift, what we're really doing is striving towards godliness. And that, in my mind, is big P purpose personified. So what is big P purpose? Big P purpose is purpose that is very goal oriented. And because we live in the United States, it's usually big and audacious, right? If you can dream it, you can build it. But religion is like that too. When we strive for godliness, we're setting ourselves up for something we probably can never reach. And it's very much all or nothing. We either reach the state of perfection by showing off his gifts to its final extent, or we don't. And a lot of times it leaves us feeling frustrated. And often we actually do things we don't enjoy that don't light us up in order to get to that goal or gift. So we're spending tons of time doing stuff that doesn't light us up, hoping to get to that godliness goal.
Okay, Jordan, I want to pull that string, before you go past it, because that's a big one for me. A lot of my audience is faith-based folks as well.
Yeah.
And that one as well, of looking at, oh my gosh, if I literally have had so many examples. I had a buddy, Ronnie. I still have a buddy named Ronnie. And I met him 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And this was in Nashville, and the dude's writing and singing music, but it's kind of on the down low. He's at my house. He plays this song. I'm a music connoisseur, and I'm blown away. But he's a nice, good little Christian guy. And he says, but I really like the applause that I get. And I think it's probably not best, because I'm going to go serve God and I need to be in misery probably. And so he's going to deny that and go to school, get a job, get a degree and do the thing. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I'm going to steal your tape and put it out anyways. This is what you're meant to do. If you like the applause, that's your problem. You go deal with that, thorn in your flesh, if we want to be biblical. But thank God he pursued music and now has songs that have been, written by huge artists all over the world. And he does have to deal with his ego somewhat. But to go back to your thing of how many people think that, okay, if it's really the big P holy grail purpose, it's probably got to be this burden on my back and this pouring out altruistic yada, yada. You get the idea. Help us with that.
Well, I think this actually deals more with meaning than purpose. So let me explain the difference.
Okay.
I think happiness is meaning and purpose, and you need both of them. Meaning is how we cognitively think about the past. It's the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. It's all about thoughts.
Yeah.
And generally, happy people tell themselves a heroic story. Like, I had difficulties in life. I had traumas. I had problems. I overcame them because I was enough. I became the hero of my story. And you move into the present future thinking, I'll continue to be enough. And that's great. So the journey of meaning is the hero's journey of enough. Now, unhappy people tend to have more of a victim's journey, right? So they see their traumas when they were younger. They feel like they were thwarted and they were not enough. And that's why in the present and future, they tend to still think that they're not enough. And so they tend to have problems with purpose. Why? Because purpose is not about the past and it's not about your thoughts. It's about the present and future and actions. Purpose is all about doing things that light you up. So let's go back to your friend. Your friend has this thing that lights him up. He loves to make music. It's great for him. That is little p purpose personified. He probably loves doing it even if there is no applause. Yes, he wouldn't mind the applause, but it's a good use of his time. And the truth of the matter is, probably if he pursues it, he'll connect with other people and use his music, maybe even within his religion, to connect people, to teach, to build community, to do all these great, wonderful things he can do. He doesn't have a purpose problem. He's got little p purpose in spades. The problem is he has a meaning problem. The story he tells himself about himself, the cognitive awareness of his past, tells him that pursuing purpose has to be painful for it to be worthwhile. That in order to be godly or to be a good religious part of his faith, that the thing he has to do has to be painful. That is a journey of enough. And he feels that he has to prove his enoughness by going through pain. I don't know. I'm not amazingly religious, but I don't think God would really want that for us. I think he would rather have us feel enough to begin with. And I would say, again, I'm not a religious person, but I would think that God would want to say the piece of me that is in you makes you enough. And so go out, pursue little p purpose, use your talents, your joys, go at things with beautiful intentions, and you are going to help people. You are going to connect to people. You're going to build community. You're going to bring other people into this wonderful religion, whatever it is. So I would say your friend has a meaning problem, not a purpose problem. And what they really need to do is really explore their sense of meaning and those narratives they've been telling themselves about themselves their whole life that tells them that they have to suffer in order to be godly and enough.
Well, thank you. And not to stick on the religious aspect, I tend to, we're all translating it. Nobody knows the exact proof and truth. That's why it's called faith. And I tend to look at it as a parent and to look at my kids. And do I have this one specific thing I want each one of them to do? No. Do I want them to find that one thing and do it, even if they're miserable? No. I want them to, they're going to be crappy people, and that's where I wanted to come next, Jordan. Okay. I'm scrolling down to my notes because I'm reading your book and I'm just pondering the heck out of purpose again. Because one of the things, you know what, I'm gonna let's jump up to a 10,000 foot level for a second, because even in coming into this, it'd be like let's look at, you're a doc, look at healthcare, and we talk about diabetes. We're constantly talking about diabetes. We know a lot about diabetes. We kind of know how to take care of it. It's not helping anything that we know how to take care of it. It's just getting worse. Okay, so purpose. There's been plenty that's been written about purpose. Everybody who's here in this show has heard aspects of purpose, probably think that they know. Well, it doesn't seem to be working. We have a purposeless, a more so culture, I feel like, and I think we're seeing that in apathy, in depression, in suicide and whatnot. So you're looking at it and going, okay, this isn't working. I kind of wanted to start there. When you look at it, what are some of the things that jumped out at you as you embarked on this journey of going, okay, this is not, we're doing it wrong?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we have a purposeless society. We have a very purposeful society. The problem is that purposefulness is around big P purpose, the kind that makes us frustrated.
Okay.
So we have a society that is constantly driving us towards purpose. Look at Instagram, look at Facebook, look at TikTok. There are tons of people telling you got to have six-pack abs, you got to travel the world, you got to wear the nicest clothes, you got to write the bestseller. I mean, there is a huge version of purpose out there. And again, the marketers, our parents, society, they're all trying to sell us this version of purpose. The reason why it isn't sticking is most of us don't have the agency to do those things. Like, I can work out all I want and I can eat the best foods, but I genetically probably will never have six-pack abs. And I'm not even sure I want to really put the work into it. So I'm not the right person at the right time with the right genetics, with the right luck. I don't have the best personal trainers in the world. Like, that is not my bag. But if I have a lack of purpose, if I'm going around saying, well, I don't know what my purpose is, it's really easy to co-opt a version that's being sold to us. And again, those people are selling it to us not because they really want us to be happy. Usually it's because they want to sell us something. And so I think that's where we go wrong. There's so many voices out there telling us to go after big, audacious, goal-oriented purpose that's really hard to achieve. And I think the answer is little P purpose, process-oriented purpose that's not hard to achieve, that fills us up doing things we like to do, very abundant instead of scarce, right? Big P purpose is scarce. There can only be so many billionaires. Little P purpose is abundant. There are tons of people who can love playing pickleball. There are tons of people who can love making music. It's not all or nothing. Winner doesn't take all. Like, it's not like a presidential election where one person wins and everyone loses. Little P purpose is abundant and everyone can win. But we've got to let go of this idea that purpose has to be big and audacious and it has to change the world and it has to prove that I'm enough and I'm a good person by doing it. That's why you don't have more people going after little P purpose, because their sense of meaning hinges on, this is going to prove that I'm good enough. And the world is telling me these are the ways you can prove you're good enough.
Well, Jordan, I've done that. So I'm guilty of what you just said. I'm not only guilty of thinking that, I'm guilty of espousing it. I have been on here on this microphone, doing that, of judging the merit of the devotion, of somebody's devotion, to see somebody. I'm not going to name specifics now, but I've done that either internally and even, I don't know if I've done it really on the microphone. I've at least done it with friends and family, though, of judging purpose, somebody devoted their life to that. What the heck is that helping the planet? And so I've done that. Again, maybe it's coming from my religious background. I don't know. And my work has always been within, call it the personal development, self-improvement world. And so I get kudos for helping people. Though if anybody listens to my shows much, you realize I'm just doing this because it's just what I'm interested in. If it didn't help anybody at all, if I could figure out a way to pay the bills, I'd just be talking with you about this kind of stuff anyway. Yeah. So it's totally selfish. If it helps somebody, that's awesome. And it does matter. And let's get into that. But if we come back, it was real telling to me. The first two stories you told in your book, first one's Julia Childs. Next one, with her, you said she found her purpose and it was, I want to cook great food. Well, okay. I would have looked back at that in my past and gone, well, how's that helping people? It's probably going to
But
be
it did.
affluent people that can afford your food. That's not changing the world. And then the next dude, your buddy who owns the antique store as a kid, starts selling baseball cards. And he found his purpose, baseball cards. I'm going, are you serious? Yeah. I mean, there's people starving. Go save somebody. I did that. I judged that. And now come over here. Well, you know what? Let's go right there. Because Jordan, this is what I wrote. Okay. I'm reading your book. This is what I wrote. The power of having a purpose is not what the purpose is, but who you are as a result of having it. What do you think?
I think the best expression of who we are is through the way we practice purpose, right? Because what is purpose? It's actions, it's intention, it's pretty much your identity in action, right? We carry out who we are through our intentions and eventually actions. And so I think it very much is that. And the mistake is, again, to believe that I have to set up this big, audacious plan to change the world, where my argument would be do things that light you up. And when you do that, you show up as your best self. And whether you mean to or not, it attracts other people, and you are going to change the world whether you mean to or not, because people are going to see you lit up and they're going to be like, I want to be close to that. I want to learn from him. Or if I know more than he does. Keep going,
but that's the mic drop. I want everybody to hear what you just said. I want me to hear that. You just did the mic drop. Keep going. But that right there is what I've learned through.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example, and it's from the book and it's from my personal life. My maternal grandfather. So my maternal grandfather died in the 1960s, 10 years before I was born. And he loved math, not because it was going to change the world, not even because it was going to make a living. He just loved math. So he became a CPA. And as a CPA, when my mom was little in the 1950s, he would sit her on his lap and he would take out his big pieces of paper, right? Because we didn't have electronic spreadsheets then. So he'd have a handwritten spreadsheet and he would show her all the numbers he was putting in the boxes and why, because it excited him. And she saw this excitement and energy. She saw his version of Little P Purpose. And she, as most kids did, decided to try it on for her own. And you know what? She realized she loved math too. So she eventually became a CPA just like him. When I was little, I had a learning disability and I couldn't learn how to read. And when all my friends were in their beginning readers, I was coloring in coloring books. I would have been lost and given up on myself. But there was one thing. I was really good at math. In fact, I was the top of my class at math because I had taken on that identity from my mom. She had demonstrated Little P Purpose. I thought it was beguiling, and I took to math too. Fast forward years later, I used my mathematical abilities to become a doctor, and I was in the hospital rounding as a beginning new doctor, and I was seeing this patient. He kept on coming in severely dehydrated, close to death. And we would hydrate him, and then basically he would end up coming right back to the hospital, dehydrated again. And I looked at his lab results, and I realized that he had a rare disease. And the reason I knew that is because I saw the mathematical relationship between two lab results that someone else who didn't love math might not have seen. We diagnosed him with the right problem. We treated him effectively. He stopped coming into the hospital. And here's the thing. He was a pastor at a local church, and he took in homeless kids and found them social services, and if they were old enough, got them jobs and fed them. And so let's look at this. A man who died 60 years ago, who lived hundreds of miles from me, him pursuing his Little P Purpose, is still affecting the world 60 years later as this gentleman whose life I saved goes out into the world and helps homeless kids. Like a pebble dropped in the ocean, a little water was displaced. And over time, that little displacement added to other displacements and waves to form a really big wave. But at other times, it dissipated to the smallest of waves. But 60 years later, it's still coming onto sandy beaches and affecting people's lives. My maternal grandfather had no interest in changing the world. He didn't think he'd be in any weird books. But yet, his Little P Purpose has impact. And that is an impact and legacy that we all can have. Do what lights you up. You will change the world. It's not selfish. It's not self-centered. It's the gift. It's the growth that you give the people around you. This is how we have impact.
Well, thank you. And that's what hits me most today about purpose that you're bringing me back around to is I honestly just thinking about your story, hearing you having somewhat errantly for an errant motive going towards becoming a doctor, which you did, and realized you did not like it. But you put all the investment in it, went to med school. Good Lord. Spent the money, did the thing. Now you're here as a doc. As a doc, are you helping people? Well, of course, you're a doc. And so you should do that, right? And so how many years ago did you stop?
So I still do hospice medicine, but very part-time, but pretty much in 2018 was when I slowed down.
Okay. So what are we at? 5, 6, 8, 6, 7 years ago. Imagine me talking to you now. Well, I wouldn't be talking to you now, but imagine that. And you're going around, and I'm going to exaggerate it. You're sullen. You don't enjoy what you do. It has merit. You've made money. You've provided for people, but you as a person, friend, a parent, a spouse, or whatever, you're just kind of dull. And so you help the patient, but otherwise you're just a dull dude. You're not really lit up at all. But you've got cultural credit, right? You've got, even from go back to the religion thing, you're doing the right thing. You're serving you're fighting the good fight, you're serving. And yet now you're doing this. And what you're doing now obviously is a direct help to people. But let's say that you were making lollipops, or, you created a Frisbee. I don't know. And you, like you are now, lit up, and you're lit up, and it affects your friends. It rubs, like you said, the ripple effect. It rubs off on your family, the grocery store clerk, the bank teller, the whatever. And you're just this happy, lit up dude. That's what took me so long to figure out.
Yeah. And look at my trajectory. So when I was a physician, I would affect maybe 500 to 1,000 people a year, right? Some people I'd save their lives. Other people I would do minimal for them. But in general, I would affect 500 to 1,000 people a year. I mostly left medicine to do something that lights me up, started a blog and then a podcast, and now I'm writing books. And my podcast goes out to thousands and thousands of people every week. I've had more than 1 million downloads in the last year. My book has gone out to thousands and thousands of people. I am affecting more people now than I've ever affected in my life. That was never my goal. My goal wasn't, I'm going to stop being a doctor, but I still want to be relevant. I still want to affect people, so I'm going to go do this. No, I kind of said, I'm going to stop being a doctor because I'm burned out and it's no longer filling me up. I'm going to do something that fills me up. It just so happens it was a happy side effect. But I think that happy side effect occurs much more when you pursue little p purpose. You do things that light you up. And like I said, like a moth to the flame, people are going to be attracted to that. And whether you mean to or not, you're going to affect the people around you, like my maternal grandfather did, like Roman did from the story, like you and I try to do. You and I both go out in the world with the intention of doing things that light us up. But because we do that, it connects with other people and eventually impacts them.
Okay, let's keep pulling that thread. I'm thinking, again, back to my youth. Well, my dad was a career coach, Dan Miller, real renowned career coach. At one point early on in his coaching, he said some of his most frequent clients were pastors and lawyers, people who he perceived had gone into those fields for probably not the best reasons, or at least the reasons that didn't fit them. It's honorable, whatever, but it had no fit to them. So pastors and lawyers. And he had so many stories, incredible stories of finding, let's say, a pastor who's, on stage, taking care of the flock, right? Tending to the congregation and serving people, and miserable, who then changes. He has one, Ronald Baldwin. You can find him. He's an artist in Nashville, Tennessee. He's done huge paintings for all the music, celebrities and whatnot. He was a pastor who, through my dad's help, became a painter. It's what lit him up. And now he paints. And the light that he gives people through his paintings of music and whatever is so powerful. That again gave me that contrast of, my gosh, yeah, we get so waylaid by this big P purpose. And I see a lot of people in those roles who are miserable. And I think, I don't care who you think you're serving. I don't want to hang out with you. You suck my light away from me. So to go back to I get to a point now of being facetious a little bit, but kind of what's the old Sheryl Crow song? If it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. To some degree, if it makes you happy, I'm going to put that above the altruistic service if it doesn't.
Well, again, I think when we talk about being a pastor or a doctor or a lawyer, that is big P purpose that society has foisted on us. And if that doesn't light you up, you are eventually headed for burnout, because those are difficult jobs. They require a lot emotionally. They require a lot of time. They're painful and difficult. If it doesn't light you up, you're headed for burnout. You're going to end up like me, leaving your career early.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then not serving people so well. It's interesting if we look at and you talk about this, look at the roles that we have. If I saw somebody who said, I want to serve people, I want to be a pastor, I think, okay, are you kind of good? How can I say this tactfully? Are you comfortable? Does it give you energy to perform? I mean, you're literally on a stage. If you have a church, you are on a stage like a TED Talk, giving a message, and people are sitting out there wondering what they're going to get. So I hope you enjoy some kind of performance. I don't. I wouldn't do it just for that reason. I don't like that. I like conversations. I don't like just delivering a monologue and a presentation. Are you, a nurturer that you come along and kind of coach and cheerlead people? That's a big part for a pastor. That's not me either. So I just knocked myself out because I've had people who said, some of the stuff that I do, like maybe that would be a role, that would fit me. I go, no, neither of those aspects do. So what's the role going to be? And you get into that. You get into role and even the identity that we have within those as aspects that we go awry. Fair?
Yes. Yes, for sure. When we realize that the thing we think we're supposed to do doesn't actually fit us.
Yeah. Yeah. So come into, as people hear this, and I know this is the big part of your book, what I struggle with. So that's why you're here. Help me. I struggle sometimes with this. And I even have sometimes with my kids of going, okay, so how do I find it? And you say, well, find that thing that lights you up. There are a lot of people, and I want them to not feel bad about it. You're in good company, as they would say. But a lot of people hearing this, I mean, they're aspiring people, or they wouldn't be listening to this show. They wouldn't be listening to your show. It's the same audience. Striving people, as Arthur Brooks would say. So they are, but they're hearing this and they're going, I don't know. I don't really know what lights me up. And we hear a lot of those messages of go back to what lit you up as a kid. And I realize there's more and more people that never were lit up as a kid. It doesn't mean they had a crappy childhood, but they just weren't exposed to much. They just kind of did the thing, went to school, and they never really were exposed to something that lit them up. So they're hearing this message now. And I kind of grieve for that, going, I don't know. Give some direction.
So a lot of people are trying to find their purpose, and we say you don't find your purpose, you build or create it, but you do have to know those inklings or those beckonings of things that light you up to build a life of purpose around. I call those purpose anchors. And so what you're really talking about is people are struggling trying to find the purpose anchors to then build a life of purpose around. And there's some really easy ways to do this. And let me give you 3 or 4 really quick, easy ways to do this.
Please.
One is to think about regrets. And so with the hospice patients, we do a life review where we talk about the big important points of their life to get them ready for dying. And a big question is, what would you regret? What do you regret never having the energy, courage, or time to do? And so I love to use that question of regret in young, healthy people. And I like to say, if you found out you were dying next week, what would you regret never having the energy, courage, or time to do? That is a great way to start thinking about purpose anchors. So if you turn regret around, we have agency because we're not dying next week. We can actually build a life of purpose around those things. Perfect example for me, I always wanted to traditionally publish a book. And if I had died 10 years ago before I wrote Taking Stock, I would have very much regretted on my dying bed that I never did it. So that realization spurred me to action. I'm like, okay, that's a regret. Let's turn that into a purpose anchor and let's build a life of purpose around it, which is exactly what I did. So regrets are a great way to think about purpose anchors. Okay. The joys of childhood you mentioned. Kids go through purpose joyfully and excitedly. So think about your childhood room. What were the pictures, the posters, the drawings, the medals? All those could be some purpose anchors. Another one, the joy of subtraction. So we talked about regret is one way. The joys of childhood is another way. Another way to find your purpose anchors is the art of subtraction. Look at your job. A lot of people are in jobs they don't love. And I say, write out every role and responsibility. There are probably 10 or 15 of them. Cross out everything you don't like. Is there anything left? So when I did that with medicine, I crossed out everything I didn't like. You know what was left? Hospice medicine. I would do hospice even if you weren't paying me for it. So I use the art of subtraction to find a purpose anchor within my work, even though I didn't love my work in general. And then I built a life more centered around hospice medicine. Last but not least, if none of those work, then you use the spaghetti method. You throw a bunch of spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. Say yes to people you normally don't say yes to. Do activities you normally don't do. Maybe spend the day doing something a little uncomfortable and see if any of that lights you up. And if it does, start doing more of those activities. And so I find that it really is, I don't want to use the word cop out, but I find that most people, if you really ask them what's important to you, like when you're about to fall asleep at night, what do you dream of being or becoming or doing? Most people have an answer to that. They've just never had the energy, courage, time, money, whatever you want to call it, whatever excuse they have. Most of the time they haven't pursued it. Maybe it wasn't societally acceptable, whatever it was. Most people have their dreams. They just never connect with them. And then at some point, I, as a physician, walk into the room and I'm telling them that they have months to live and they got to prepare and be on hospice. And that's when they finally give themselves permission to actually connect to that thing.
That was the word I was going to right now was permission. That's what I got on a silver platter from my upbringing. Thank goodness with permission, which I actually want to go. Well, a couple of things. So you mentioned regrets and just resources for folks listening. Dan Pink, his book, The Power of Regret. Yeah. I had him on the show for that, but that you can go find that show or that book. And then Bronnie Ware, the hospice nurse. What was it? Is it the 5 Regrets of the Dying? Is that
5 Regrets of the Dying?
Yeah. Okay. 2 great resources to number 1, regrets, you said. Now next, childhood interests. I pulled that out when I was reading your book and I wanted to mention it here because if I look at that as a kid, my dad was interested in vocationally cars, owned his own businesses. So I worked around cars, kind of like you though, with your dad as a doc. I didn't know it at the time. It took a long while to figure out I don't really care about cars. And so but what did resonate? Well, he was an entrepreneur. He ran his life in his own business. That stuck with me. And I got to see he always was doing what he was interested in. And he did. He loved cars. He loved playing with it. So I got those 2 things. But as if folks are looking back to their childhood, I felt like that's relevant to look at the things and don't get confused with one aspect of it. Like if I look back and go, well, cars, that didn't fit. Yeah, but some significant pieces of it really did. Now, then you said, look at the job. And I don't know what the stats are anymore on job satisfaction, on people enjoying what they do. My dad wrote 48 Days to the Work and Life You Love. I mean, again, I got that permission handed to me on a silver platter. But the people that I would say, gosh, Jordan, the people I have on my show, so probably same with you, the people that you have on your show, they are working at what lights them up.
And people don't realize there's an incrementalism to this. So let me give you a perfect example. I have a friend who works in corporate America and feels like her job is meh, right? Not great, not horrible, pays the bills. At some point, she realized that there was something that lit her up. She's really interested in women's place in the workspace. Like this is something that lights her up. She likes talking about it. She likes talking about equity and equality. She likes talking about how we can make the workplace better. So she started blogging about it. It was just a personal interest. She did her own research, et cetera. At some point when she was blogging, she's like, I really want to bring this message to my job. And she started volunteering to put together programs for her company, big multinational company. After doing that for about 6 months, her boss came to her and said, you know what? This is so valuable. We've had such good feedback. I'd like to make you 50% on your job currently now and use the other 50% to start doing these programs full time.
Wow.
So think about that. She added in something she enjoyed. So this is the joy of addition. She added in a purposeful activity, even though she couldn't change her job, right? So she still did that job that she wasn't excited about, but she added in something joyful. So she was already winning the game. But ultimately, that allowed her to subtract something she didn't like. She got rid of 50% of her work time, which she didn't love, because someone saw her lit up doing something she did love, and they saw the value and wanted to integrate it into their business. And so, yes, you don't have to be lit up by your job. Most people aren't. But it is incumbent upon us to be looking at our schedule and to be adding in as much joyful activity as possible and getting rid of as many things we loathe every week, every month, every year of our lives, to the point where hopefully we get to a point where we're doing mostly things we love and very few things we loathe. And it's a very incremental thing. And so if you're stuck at a job you don't like, look at that art of subtraction, find what you do like about it, and see if you can increase your time doing that time thing and decrease your time doing other things. This is something we can change over time. And there are a million different ways to do it. but you got to be intentional, and you got to understand what little p purpose looks like in your life so you can start toggling that switch and changing things.
Okay, let me get your thoughts on this. The show is called What Drives You. That's what my book is. So to look at the drive, I, again, used to admittedly give more value and espouse it to people who were working at that thing that is their purpose, the big deal. Only to find then some people that I really respected, really revered, people who were lit up, and they were different. They were different. They could work at something that they enjoyed. Now, I didn't find anybody who was lit up that worked at something they hated. Work that they enjoyed, but it wasn't the holy grail to them. But it afforded them usually time or money to then support the thing over here. One of them is Dave Munson. He owns Saddleback Leather Company. So you go to saddlebackleather.com, high-end bags. The dude likes design. That lights him up, designing leather bags. I could care less. I would rather pull weeds. It's not me. But he likes doing it, and he makes a truckload of money doing that. And it affords him and his wife time and money. And they go over to Africa and build, schools and homes and do all this kind of stuff with it. That's their big P purpose. But he spends a lot of his day designing bags, kind of little p. And I look at that and go, that doesn't fit me. Even the little p purpose. I want to be doing the big P purpose, kind of all the time. And I'm privileged to kind of do that. But I realize that's one way, and there are other ways. And so that's the kind of purpose, understanding that you're helping people with that should free us up to not stick it in one hole.
And I would also say, in my framework, actually, you're not pursuing big P purpose. You're actually pursuing probably little p purpose, but you do have some defined and set goals. So okay. Big P purpose is very goal oriented, and usually you don't enjoy the process of doing what you're doing to get there. So it's not process oriented, it's goal oriented. The difference that most people don't understand is you can have little p purpose, something that lights you up, and you can even have big audacious goals within your little p purpose. The difference is that whether you reach that goal or not doesn't change your enjoyment of doing the thing.
Fair.
And so when you say these are my big Ps, I don't actually believe that. I think that's your little p purpose, but you have some big audacious goals connected to it. But my feeling is you do those things that you light up, and maybe you only get halfway to that goal. You're still happy, and it was still a good use of your time, and it was still worth doing. Versus if it's your big P purpose, it's like I either get there and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there, even do things I don't enjoy doing to get there, and I'm happy, or I don't get there and I'm unhappy.
Totally true. No, you're totally true. Because I have those. I have a couple right now that are, oh my gosh, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to wear me out.
So little p purpose is goal agnostic, but not goal phobic.
Well, this right here, we're doing it. This is little p. This I would have flown to where you are and done this over coffee or a glass of wine if nothing else happened but just that. This is for me.
Because you love the process.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Totally. All right, let's look at some other resources. I really liked in your book, you have a life review. You do a little snippet of it and I don't know, one of the chapters. And then I think you have the full thing in the back. Talk about that again. Cause I do want to help people. And I'll put this in the show notes and the intro and whatnot of saying, hey, this is not just a contextual discussion on purpose overall. This is really to try to help you say, gosh, if you're not sure what it is, here are some steps to take. If you do think you have some inklings, we want to have you feel permission to go after this. But if you don't, so talk about the life review, as you have it, but even conceptually of how you can help yourself uncover these.
So life review basically is a structured series of questions we do with hospice patients to review their life, and it helps them come to some conclusions. It's a great closing way to look at your life and come to terms with it. But what I've seen is this series of 20 to 30 questions. And in the book, there's an actual full handout, which gives you like 30, 40 questions from different portions of your life. What I've seen is that probably a lot of us could benefit from doing that at least on a yearly basis when we're young, because it recenters us on what's important. We have so many messages out there that distract us from what's important. Maybe it's making that salary. Maybe it's getting that job promotion. Maybe it's living up to the Joneses and doing what they do. And so we need that recentering to go back and say, no, what's really important? Like, what are our dreams? What are our aspirations? What were our best moments? What were our worst moments? Who are the people that made us feel most alive? By going back and going through that extensive list of questions, You're reconnecting with what matters to you, not society, not someone else's version of purpose, but what really lights you up. And so that's really the goal of all of it.
Okay, let's go back to that then. Because what I feel you do a good job of with the book is you're not judging anyone's purpose. Is it fair enough to say you're ultimately, like if you're going to go talk to people about purpose or you want to, and you just get a random selection of people and you have somebody come in and you say, man, are you totally lit up? And the guy says, yeah, then let's not wait, go your way. What do we need to talk about? It's not judging what you do or not. It's judging that being lit up. So I wanted to take that into just how can I say this? Just the ordinary minutia roles of life. I'm a dad. I have a house, big house. I have land. I've got a lot of kids. There's enough doing during the day, just taking care of life, that could be someone's purpose. Gosh, I'm going to get really muddy here because if somebody had said, hey, Kevin, so is that it for you? Is that your purpose? Because I've got 9 kids. So you just want to be like a full-time dad. You're happy just taking care of homes and automobiles and maintenance, whatever. I'd have gone, oh, no, not really. So I've gotten myself in it. That doesn't fulfill me. I know other people, it totally does. They're lit up by that. Great. The roles of life. But for me, it's not. So now if I end up with grown kids or I end up with $1 billion and don't have to work anymore, then what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, I have to admit, that was one of the biggest hills to climb, I think, in writing this book, is a lot of people say, well, people are my purpose. My kids are my purpose.
Right.
And I make an argument in the book that actually I don't believe that's healthy. I think that you need to have a sense of little p purpose outside of other people. And there's a few reasons why. One is your kids go away, right? They disappear, they leave. When they're toddlers, you could spend tons of time with them. Then they go to school and you're going to spend less time with them. Then they go to college and you're going to spend less time with them. Then they get married and they have their own family to deal with. And so if kids are your sense of purpose, they're going to grow older and move away and leave you feeling a little bit lonely. Or God forbid, they marry a spouse that doesn't like you, or they marry a spouse who wants to move them out of the country, or God knows.
Or there's conflict and you lose relationship. Happens all the time.
But there's something even more important. The truth of the matter is, most of us want our kids to live a life finding the things that light them up, right? That's why your kids are your purpose, because you want to build a life that helps them be lit up and do things that they love. Well, how are your kids going to know how to do that if they don't see you model that behavior?
Yeah.
If you want your kids to have a sense of little p purpose and do things that light them up, you need to model that behavior, and they need to see you doing those things so you give them permission to do things that light them up. Otherwise, they're going to grow older and think the kids are their purpose. But what if they can't get married? What if they can't have kids genetically? What if the world has changed in such a way that kids are just not a possibility? Do you really want them to feel horrible because they couldn't follow the modeling you gave them? No. You want to model for them doing things that light them up, and the best way to do that is for you to pursue little p purpose. That will give them the model they need to go explore the things they need to explore.
You just pulled out, this was in a recent show. Gosh, I actually don't know if it's published yet, but that I did with Jen Drummond. She is famous for climbing all the big mountains and whatnot. She's a mom of 7 as well. And it was me telling a story during that show of years back. I had not competed in a long time, and I took my family and I did a duathlon. And long story short is, it was later on, and even years later, where the kids testified and they said, Dad, that was one of the coolest things ever. To see you do what inspired you.
Yeah.
And I was feeling guilty for dragging them along like it was some ego trip and just taking my family to go watch me. And they responded, they said, you doing what inspires you really changed my paradigm. Not that I then just devoted myself to going off and having my fun time so they could see. I mean, they still want me to care for them, but totally to what you saw, which was, and I'll have to testify, Jordan, that was the gift I got. That's what I got. I got to see parents who were focused on what lights them up. And I got to see other people doing that. And from that, go back to where we started. I've never had a day where I wasn't excited and eager to wake up.
We talk about generational trauma all the time, right? We talk about the things that are handed down from generation to generation.
Really big right now. Yeah.
Difficulty.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is generational growth. It's the exact opposite. When we hand down these healthy behaviors that give our kids permission and allow them to pursue the lives they want to live, We spend so much time talking about generational trauma and we never talk about generational growth. When you let the people in your life see you lit up, doing things that are deeply important to you, you are giving them that growth script, which they carry with them and pass down to further generations. And so we need to really invest in generational growth. That's Little P Purpose. That's doing things that light you up and having it apparent to your family and friends. It's not just your family. It's also your friends. I would argue that when you, as a young person, get to see older people doing things that light them up, they pass down that generational growth, even if you're not technically related to them. And I dealt with that as a kid. When I talk about the antique store owner who sold baseball cards, he was a great model of generational growth, which I pass down to my kids all the time.
That brings back into question then the roles that we are fulfilling. If we are doing things that do not light us up, I don't want to say especially if we have kids, but that's such an acute place. What are we modeling for them? And I got hit with this, I don't know, Jordan, maybe 7-8 years ago by my best friend, Randy James, who most people on the show know of. He's done a lot of shows with me. And I can't remember the exact instance, but he finally said, so this is what you want to showcase to your kids being an entrepreneur is running around with your hair on fire, high anxiety, yada. It sounds so pithy, but it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, holy crap. No, I love being an entrepreneur, but I'm showing them crap. That is not the ripple effect that I want to have. And tell me what you think about this. Again, I'm trying to be sensitive to folks, because some people who are doing what you need to do to put food on the table, God bless you for doing that. But if you're doing a job in drudgery, thinking that, well, but I'm serving whoever, I'm thinking you're not lit up, and you're probably taking the position that somebody else who would be lit up by doing that would have, and somebody else has your position. What do you think?
So I think that's true, but I also want to calm people down.
Okay.
It's okay. Not every job is going to light you up, and sometimes you do need to put food on the table, but that should not stop you from pursuing purpose in your life. Use the joy of addition. Add in 5 or 10 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour of joyful activity during the weekend. Start a hobby. Be like my friend in corporate America who wasn't lit up by her job, but started doing a hobby on the side that did light her up. And what do you know? Eventually it became incorporated into her job. You have ultimate power, and there are levers. So yes, if you have tons of money, you can quit everything you don't like and use that time to do things you do like. But most people don't have the privilege of having lots of money. But money is only one tool. We have our joys, our youth, our energy, our connections, our skills. We have tons and tons of tools. And so use some of those to add in a little, joyous, purposeful activity in your life to get rid of some of the things you loathe, and keep on incrementally improving that over time. And so there are plenty of examples in the book, and I can tell you plenty of examples of life, people who hated their job and who didn't have much money, and yet still were able to create purpose in their life and eventually some economic margin to get rid of the things they didn't like in their job. But it's going to take some work. You might have to pursue something that is purposeful for you, something that's joyful, that lights you up, and see maybe that turns into a side hustle one day that creates a little money that relieves you of spending so many hours in the office that you don't like. But it's going to take some work, but it's possible for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Let's go further into that. Just let's call them interests. You mentioned that, or you pulled that out of something I said right at the beginning of the show, just an interest. Mm-hmm. There are, I have a list of interests, things that if I'm not doing this and I don't need any money, what would I do? Oh my gosh. I'd hike, I'd run, I'd mountain bike, I do woodwork type things. I research different, personal development things that I'm interested in. And how many things have I not tried? I've never tried to do painting or different things like that. I enjoy singing to some degree. There's places I could invest in there. And you said hobbies. There are, I don't know, do you know the stats on that culturally? Because I feel like, and I'm prone to blame social media and entertainment and our investment in that we're kind of at a place of less people exposing themselves and investing in interest outside of just what has to be done during the day and then my entertainment. What do you think?
So I think what we found is that people have a lot of free time, right? The Bureau of Labor Statistics does the U.S. time survey every so once in a while, and they find that on average, most Americans have about 5 hours of free time. Unfortunately, I think they're filling that free time with a lot of TV watching and a lot of social media.
Yeah.
And so I think there are other things to catch our attention, which take us away from the deeper work of hobbies, which are things that are joyful to us. So I think we're probably doing less of that, but I don't think we have to be doing less of it. I think that's just where people culturally have moved.
It's okay. You got me thinking about this. I had somebody give me the message of kind of the difference between relief and renewal in essence. So hard day at work, kick your shoes off, watch a ball game, eat a bag of chips. Okay, it's fine. It's relief, but you don't get up from that going, oh man, I feel great. I feel renewed. You don't. As opposed to going and meditating or going to a spa or getting a massage or doing some self-care where you come away from it and you really feel renewed and refreshed. Okay, to the same thing, I that's what went through my head as you said what you just did, Jordan, of we have time in our days. Most people don't think they do, but we prove that we do by the entertainment and the amount of Netflix that we watch and social media that we scroll. We have that time that we could be investing in hobbies that light us up as opposed to entertainment, which, and again, I love entertainment as much as anybody, I think. I enjoy it, but it doesn't light me up. I don't know what the good analogy is, but is that a fair comparison?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you find things that light you up, they tend to both relieve and renew you.
Okay.
And so I think when and the people who really find things that light them up, when they have the 9 to 5 and they don't like the 9 to 5, they don't go home and rest. They go home and do the thing that lights them up. And you'll find that more often. Yes, though, 5 hours of free time, you can rest for 2 hours and then still spend 3 hours doing something that lights you up or something that feels purposeful. But I think when we start living these lives of things that really we do enjoy the process of doing, we're much more likely to recover faster. And not only that, but we're much more likely to enjoy the ups and downs of the things in our life we don't like, right? So a lot of times the answer to burnout is not necessarily work less, because sometimes you have no choice, but sometimes it's developing yourself outside of work so that you feel renewed and lit up so that when you return to this thing that drains you a little bit, you're more prepared. If you're burnt out, the answer ultimately is not rest more. It's either decrease that thing that burns you out or create a life that's very fulfilling outside of the burnout so you don't feel it as bad.
I had Richie Norton on the show a year ago or so with his latest book, and he mentioned that. It was just kind of a side. It wasn't his focus of his message, but mentioned that he saw burnout. Most people think, oh, I burned out because work too much. He says, that's not what I experienced. He says, the people that I know that are the most lit up, to use our terminologies, work more than anybody, but they enjoy what they do. He says, I think burnout comes from just working and doing so much of what doesn't light us up.
Well, exactly. I think burnout is a crisis of purpose. It's you've built a life around a purpose that doesn't feel authentic, and it's exhausting you to spend all your time trying to fill with a sense of purpose that doesn't light you up.
I feel like one of the anchoring aspects, and we can anchor there with this, that you pulled out or that you brought us to within purpose that I so appreciated was just this concept again of the journey. You said it earlier, the journey being more important than the destination. And that just, Arthur Brooks helped me come to that somewhat with his book, Strength to Strength. But that if we're looking at our purpose, maybe define that again, just to end us today with, to look at it, that we have got to stop focusing on that destination alone and making sure that we are enjoying the daily process.
Little p purpose.
Little p purpose.
The kind of purpose that gives you health, longevity, and happiness. I hypothesize, I postulate that is process-oriented purpose, not goal-oriented. Process-oriented purpose, it's easy, it's abundant, it's doing things that light you up, and it's available for all of us. But we've got to embrace it. We've got to do more of those things.
That's the mic drop. Jordan, man, thank you. This is, again, I had you on the show with this topic because it feels like there's so much talk about it that's diluted it. And I see that people are, I feel like we're falling behind on purpose, just like we are with health and wellness. We are not finding it, and people don't understand it. And I feel like my biggest takeaway is coming back to little P purpose. I know so many people who the big P purpose, they kind of know what they want to do. But they're not, it's so overwhelming. Well, I'm going to take this back to my kids. I'll be going back to the house today to, I think, 8 of them, and talking about this because they deal with it as well. And I haven't always had the perfect answer for them. So, well, here's the after Christmas gift, your book. Fair enough. And thank you for doing what you've done, for investing in this. And I hope we can get this message, well, we will, to a lot of people. And I'm going to keep chewing on it and referencing it. So, man, thanks for this. And thanks for being with me again.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, friends, thanks for joining us on this drive. That, again, is Jordan Grumet. And his current book, this new one that we're talking about here, this muse, is The Purpose Code: How to Unlock Meaning, Maximize Happiness, and Leave a Lasting Legacy. And you can also find him wherever you're listening to your podcast right now at the Earn and Invest podcast. I've been a guest on there. You'll find a lot of names, some you know, some you don't, but people who are, you're going to align with them. I'll tell you that. Got a question or comment on what we discussed here for myself or for Jordan? Connect with me at kevinmiller.co. And until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further. And most of all, enjoy your ride.
Yeah.